stand up and speak of England and our rights, right? So that's the first thing. The second, if there is no one to vote for, you must write on your ballot. You must vote. Constitutionally, you must vote. It is an absolute right. And you write on that ballot, I do not consent, right? So there's another guy out there called Andy the Gabby Cabby. He's just recently done a big video about it. He asked me some questions and I said, listen, you need to go and look at this precedent that was set in 1703. And he went and downloaded the archive of that particular ruling. And what he saw amazed him. He said, everything you've said is true. And the British media and some of the alternative media, right, are lying about it. Why is that? Well, the reason is because we are unique in England in having this option right on the ballot. I do not consent. You must use your ballot. If you do not vote, you're doing what the communists want and what the Marxists want and what the fascists want. That's how they take control. What you need to do is write on that ballot, I do not consent, Ashby versus White, 1703. And once you do that, if that pile of I do not consent is higher than the so-called elected candidate, then you create a constitutional crisis and the separation of powers is brought in to bear. And you go to an election court and the election court nullifies the election, right? Because you've said, I do not consent. And that's it. You can only be taxed, you can only be governed, they can only enforce laws and make laws if you consent. If you put on that ballot, I do not consent, and there's a record of it, that's it. It's all over for them. And again, as a group of people, again, we're members of the Selden Society, all of this information can be found if you look for it. It's being hidden. So that's the answer to that in a nutshell. If you don't vote, you're complicit in what's going on, and you must vote.
All right, so the next question then from Maria. Should England do what the British Union will never do and bring accountability to the British political union Uniparty?
Absolutely. So that is what we're about, and it's why we're oppressed and suppressed. It's why the BBC won't even show our logo on their websites. When we had 4 candidates standing in the general election, I mean, in Chorley, I got 1,007 votes, and it was strategic. The others got their votes in the 3 other areas. Again, I stand a lot of the time in the northwest. The north of England has been completely abused by the British. They've shut down the shipbuilding industries, the steel industries, the coal industry, the car making industries, and they are crushing us. And it is for working people to understand. I'm a working class person. I may speak with a southern accent, but my family walked down 150 years ago with their tools on their shoulder from the north to London. Otherwise, I'd be speaking just like you. And the point people need to understand is working class is working class, and English is English. We have liberty and freedom in our veins. They are terrified of a peasant's revolt. And we are the people that can do that.
So you're getting asked why certain people, including members of the royal family, I think this person is referring to Prince Andrew, are above justice.
Are they above justice? Well, the answer to that, in this country, the king can do no wrong. In this country, and again, the book, one of them, the big grey book behind me, tells you exactly the reason for it. That's Halsby's Laws of England. There are certain people associated with the royal family that cannot be prosecuted. The reason why they started to bring a prosecution in America was because, and everyone who's an American, and I love America and I love Americans, right? And especially the independent states of America, because that is what you are. You should not be under a federal government taking the rights of the independent states. But let me just say this to everyone listening, this American. Since 1776, you stuck your finger up at the British and keep doing it. You need to prosecute people. We've got something called universal jurisdiction that cases, and we're bringing a case in America. One of our members was tortured by the British police. It's currently going through the courts here, but only on a tort basis. We want to bring a criminal prosecution of the British police. And on that indictment, we will name King Charles III. It can only be done in America because in America, there is nothing protecting King Charles III from a torture indictment. And that is because the British agreed, they ratified the United Nations Convention Against Torture.
So Maria's got a follow-up question. What has the British Union done for my child and my family?
My answer to that is absolutely nothing. Again, people need to be aware of this, and I don't think they are aware that the British Parliament, there's no such thing as British law, by the way. The British Parliament, there are no English MPs. There are Scottish MPs, there are Irish MPs, there are Welsh MPs, and then the rest of them are British MPs, because by stealth they have allowed the people who call themselves British, a bit like the Soviet Union, to take control of this nation. And here's the kicker, people. They repealed the part of the Acts of Settlement, which was further securing our rights and liberties, that stated that you could only be a member of Parliament or House of Lords or a judge if you were born of English parents. So think about the United States of America. You can only be the president of the United States of America if you are born in America, right? And then for us, the English, they got that protection from us. So they incorporated it into their constitution from England. We expanded on it in England, and there was a particular reason why we did, which I won't go into now. But again, people should be aware it was the British that repealed that unlawfully, ultra-vires. That was a constitutional statute that protected England from foreigners being in that parliament. And now if you look at that parliament, you can see it's nearly all foreigners.
So, question from Lady Katz. Has Trump got his sights on England or even Scotland, seeing as he is a MacLeod descendant?
The direct answer to that is President Trump is a Presbyterian, meaning that he's a Protestant. If you look at our history, the English Bill of Rights, etc., and even to some extent the Acts of Union, protects the Protestant religion and the gospel. Right. So if you look at the Coronation Oath Act, if you look at the original contract, which is the Declaration of Rights of 1688, it protects the English and the Protestants. Why is President Trump's family being from Scotland important? Because he gets it. He absolutely gets it. He also understands that Protestants were being persecuted. He wasn't a Catholic, and he isn't a Catholic. And I'm not having a pop at Catholics here. I'm just making sure. But in history, there's two groups of people that cause serious problems for us. One is called Jesuits, and the other group I won't name. But the Jesuits were banished. If anyone knows anything about history, in Switzerland, for example, they caused a civil war in 1848, I believe it was. It was the Bundesband civil war in Switzerland. And again, the Swiss banished the Jesuits, right? So the Jesuits are a different group of people. I was married to a Catholic for 33 years, right? So I haven't got a problem with Catholics, but there's certain groups of people that are still actively causing problems for England, and they're doing the same on the southern border of America, and that can all be backed up. Everything that I'm saying to you with research can be backed up. So getting back to that question, there's various reasons for what's going on. It nearly all has historical precedent. Most of it, the British Empire is basically an extension of the Roman Empire. And if people understood that the Roman Empire is the original communism, you will understand what I'm talking about. There was only two groups of people in the Roman system. There was them and us, and then you had a slave class. And what they're trying to do is make us, the English, back into a slave class.
So do you think Trump is on the right track with his policies against unfettered immigration?
Absolutely. Again, if you want to talk about what he's doing, he's suggesting he's going to put them on planes and send them back. He's using the American economy as a weapon, as he should. If you go back to the original founding fathers of America, just like the English, they didn't want a war. They didn't want a war with people as such. And they were suckered into wars. I could talk in detail about how and why that happened, but this channel would probably get banned if I told the truth. But you can hear that on Rumble. The problem you've got is the Marxists and communists and indeed fascists. They want open borders. They need open borders for various reasons. But any time that you get involved with tariffs, you are protecting your workforce. You have actually got the leadership of the country honouring the working class by protecting them, and again, it's the only real way of protecting the nation going forward. So I absolutely agree with his policies. There will be things. Don't forget that President Trump was one of the top strategists in the New York military academy, which I believe he attended for 6 years. He's no mug. He knows exactly what he's doing, and his job is to protect America, American first, and that's exactly what he's doing. And we've wrote him a letter to say that England is a captured nation, and in America they have something in July called Captured Nations Week, where they show nations that have been captured, and we are still a colony of the British Empire. And what we're showing them is we are aligned with America. It isn't the British that has a special relationship with America. It is England. And President Trump knows that.
And do you think that people here are so exasperated with what's going on with the major parties here, another party such as yours could come in and sweep and put the correct policies in place?
The answer is we could, because if you look at the English Constitution Party, our manifesto is unique. And I had to take the Electoral Commission to court because they didn't want to register us. And they backed out and they allowed us to be registered because our manifesto is actually the English Constitution. So imagine having a political party in America, let's say the Republicans, and their constitution and their manifesto, they stood up and said, our manifesto is the American Constitution. Well, that's what the English Constitution Party have done. And that shows people we haven't got any whips. So all we're doing, especially in Runcorn and Helsby, is saying we represent you, the people, right? We're not interested in being told what we can and can't say by the party, right? If you vote for any of the other parties, I mean any, right? You are voting for a whip. And if that's what you want, if you want to vote for a party that tells your candidates what they can or cannot say, then just keep voting for people. I mean, particularly one, Reform, for example, their candidate is a magistrate. So a magistrate that has nodded to all the police, that have convicted working class people, that have told lies, and that magistrate has sat there and nodded away like a nodding dog, sending people down, right? And that's what they want to elect. Well, I won't tolerate that. I'm there to speak for the people and to air the people's grievances in Parliament and to the Crown. You would see, just to make sure everyone's aware of this, if you ever want to see a maiden speech on par with Cromwell, elect me on the 1st of May 2025, and I'll tell you now, they will be sitting there trembling because I will be using parliamentary privilege to its fullest. That's it. So everyone needs to understand that this country is in trouble, and people need to snap out of this Britishness stuff and go back. And let me just make sure I'm clear on this. We want to void the Acts of Union. It's the cleanest way of stopping the nonsense. What does that mean? It means you go back to being a Commonwealth nation. It means you go back to full independence. It means you go back to governing yourselves. That's it.
So let's say then that we saw the inquiry into the grooming gangs get voted down by Labour, the Conservatives, and Reform. And I know people who are invested in Reform now as if it's an alternative. But are you saying it's just an illusion of choice?
Absolutely. So let me, on our leaflets that we sent out, just to make sure, I understand that you just had some people on your show talking about what they describe as grooming gangs. They are not grooming gangs. They are rape and torture gangs. There is a law in this country, the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 134, torture, right? Section 6 states it is a mandatory life sentence if convicted by a jury. It is indictment only. What that section of the law states is if any state official acquiesces, consents, omits, or acts to cause torture, and rape is torture, it's recognized as torture under international law, if anyone of the council, social services, the police, MPs, prime ministers, Gordon Brown, right? The reason why they're terrified of me is because I have put that information out there, and I said I will stand in that parliament and demand to know why a law that was enacted by Queen Elizabeth II in 1988 on the tricentenary of the English Bill of Rights, why that law is not being used. Why do they keep talking about inquiries when all we've got to do is put it in front of a jury in all of the areas in England, and the end of that judicial inquiry by jurors, if they get found guilty, they get a whole life sentence. That includes Gordon Brown. That includes the police officers. That includes social services. That includes the council officials. And nothing I'm telling you now is fake news. It is all completely true, right? So we've just put that leaflet out, and it's gone out all over Runcorn and Helsby. And we're hoping that people finally read it. But instead, they've been so demoralized, believing they haven't got someone that represents them. You absolutely have. So again, people need to realize there is 100% always a solution, and the solution is the Constitution.
Yeah, well said, man. So Lady Katz wants to know, why are they arresting people for vocalizing statements such as, social media posts, but then letting certain predators walk free?
One is because they're winding people up for a civil war. The second reason is because all of those people trusted their British solicitors, British barristers. I'm going to make sure I tell everybody this, right? If you are ever arrested, you say no comment. You do not answer a single question. If they say to you, do you want a cup of tea, Graham? You say no comment. Because if you don't, they will use their list of questions in a court of law, and the judge will allow all of their questions, even though you said yes to a cup of tea, right? The only reason they want you to answer questions is to convict you. It is their job to find the evidence to prosecute you. So shut the beep up. Right? Don't say anything. America got the Fifth Amendment from England. And yet you're not told that. And you should be. The reason why them people are in prison was because they trusted the British establishment. Well, let me tell you something. You will know one day. I don't know what's going to happen yet. But if people often say to me, we want you to be Prime Minister. I said, I don't want to be Prime Minister. Well, what do you want to be then? I said, make me the Chief Justice and I will do what King Alfred did, right? And do you know what King Alfred did? He hanged. This is the law.
Let's be careful.
So King Alfred carried out the sentence for perjuring your oath, and 44 judges met their demise, right? Because they perjured their oath under English law. So if you want to see me as a Chief Justice, and if you want me to go through all of them judges that have done exactly that, you will see the sentence carried out. You'll see a fair trial. You'll see a fair trial first, though.
Tink wants to know, who wrote the Constitution? Wasn't it written by them as well?
No, so our Constitution, that's a good question. Our Constitution goes back at least 1,500 years. So England has been a nation since 927. As you move through the history of England, different parts have been created. It's called a common law constitution for a reason. It's not codified. We did have a codified constitution with Cromwell. And again, that was quite a good constitution, but codified constitutions are not really English. What you do with the separation of powers, it allows the judges to turn up or turn down the gas. So if something starts to come to the boil, the High Court can come in and turn it down and say, hang on a minute, we're causing rebellion, there's a problem here. And they can void laws. They can void primary legislation if it causes rebellion. By the way, that's always been the law in this country. So the common law will control, that's where the term comes from. The common law will control statute. Many people say to me, wrongly, that statute is not law. It is law. What happened, we had charters. Charters is in effect a statute that's created by king in council with the council. And what they did in 1275 was they expanded the franchise of the council, King's Council, into a parliament to bring more people in, and then they created statutes. So a statute really is a charter. The problem is that the people in that parliament, which is British, not English, is ignoring our constitution. Democracy is fine as long as it is limited by the constitution, and it is, and Sir John Laws actually stated that. So everyone should understand we have a constitution. Various people were involved with that constitution, that's correct, but it wasn't just bad guys that wrote that. It was good guys, people who believed in God, people who were Christian, and believed that we were all equal under the law, which we are, and in the sight of God.
So a question from Maria: why is it okay for England to be turned into 9 regions without our people being asked? First they stole our parliament, and then they took away our self-sufficiency, and now they are dismantling us. Well,
Maria, I've got to tell you something. That is, it's more of an observation than a question, but I agree entirely.